General, thank you so much for joining me here in Warsaw today. So let's jump straight into the questions. Considering the incursion of the Russian drones into Polish airspace last week, how do you assess the response of NATO countries and of Poland? I mean, we've heard that you had some responses about how the whole thing
Well, first of all,
out.
I would not call it an incursion. I call it a Russian drone operation. This was a deliberate effort by Russia to test our responses, our readiness, and to keep sending a message. So incursion sounds almost accidental. Clearly, this was not accidental. The response overall is not good. What the Russians will have learned from this is that we in NATO are still not prepared to deal with what Ukrainians have to face every night. The fact that our response was to send up F-35s, F-16s, when in Ukraine, of course, they're using all kinds of other weapon systems, much smaller, to counter drones. That tells me that we're still not ready for the scale and the speed and the complexity of what Ukraine is facing. But credit to Poland that your pilots had the correct rules of engagement so that they could immediately shoot. That's still not true in many European countries, that they are authorized to shoot. The second positive thing is that the alliance has already started this Operation Eastern Century, and that will provide a framework which will allow increased readiness, increased capabilities. And so, you know, our alliance, our allies are very good at learning and adapting, so we'll get better.
It seems to be the case that drones are the present and the future of combat, but how do you think that drones are actually changing modern warfare as we know?
Well, of course, they're so cheap to make that you can create hundreds. Well, that's what the Russians are using every night, hundreds. And Ukrainians, of course, are using hundreds at different levels. That's one of the things that makes them such a useful system, so cheap, and yet they can go so far, they can do so many different things. That's number one. Number two, it does make it more difficult to conceal capabilities from the enemy. So the best soldiers, the best units are the ones that learn how to operate in that environment where it's much more difficult to conceal yourself. It can be done if you're disciplined, well-trained, good, tough sergeants that make soldiers do the right thing. But if you make a mistake, you will pay a price.
And do you think that Europe is actually doing enough in terms of learning from the experience that Ukraine has in combat with Russia in order to actually beef up and up its own defenses?
I think probably everybody's Ministry of Defense talks about what they're learning from the Ukrainians. But I mean, this war has been going on 11 years, and we still were not ready to be able to shoot down 19 drones. We only got 3 out of 19 after all these years. So no, we are not ready. And I think it's because too many countries are still having a hard time saying that Russia is at war with us. Now, most of the leadership here in Poland does not have that problem. Our allies in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they don't have that problem. Finland, Romania. But as you go further west, and of course, even my own country, the United States, have not made the mental transition to Russia is at war with us. And we have to demonstrate that we are prepared. Now, there was a drone that flew through Romania just a couple days ago after this drone operation against Poland. They didn't shoot it down. So pilots, they have the authority in Romania to shoot it down, but the protocols have not been approved yet. So even Romania, still not ready to do it. So we have a long way to go.
Do you think that technology is actually going to replace human involvement in combat? I mean, we've seen Ukraine actually releasing 18 to 22-year-old men to finally leave the country, to be able to cross the border. Do you think that there's a sort of a shift taking place?
I would not make that connection. Think of drones as a new capability. I mean, we had soldiers were fighting before there were airplanes, before there were tanks, before there were jets. And, you know, these are all new capabilities. So what really matters is how fast we can learn how to exploit that capability, get the most out of it, and protect ourselves from the enemy's use of the capabilities. So and some human functions will be replaced perhaps, but at the end of the day, Poland still has to have good quality women and men in uniform that are smart, that are fit, that are committed, and that can adapt to new technologies.
I'd like to take a moment to look at Keith Kellogg, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine's quote, who said, Russia is in fact losing this war. Now, they make movements and say, well, they're advancing the Donbass region and Donetsk, but if considering advancing, moving by meters, not miles, well, then okay, that's successful. But the cost they're having is enormous, and I don't think people truly appreciate it. But what, in your opinion, is the situation on the Ukrainian front line, and how is it going to affect anything that's going to happen in the future?
I agree with everything General Kellogg said. I listened to his statement there. He's exactly right. This nonsense in some media that, oh, the Russians are advancing, you know, they're gaining ground. No, they're not. I mean, Pokrovsk, you know how far east in Ukraine that is. And it's 3.5 years since the large-scale invasion, 11 years since the war started, and they still haven't captured Pokrovsk. Now, of course, Putin does not care how many of his soldiers are killed. It means nothing to him. He will keep doing what he's doing until he realizes, or maybe the oligarchs around him tell him that Russia cannot win. But he will keep doing it as long as he believes that he can win, which means that he believes that the West will get tired. He can already see that the United States is no longer really committed to helping Ukraine. So, but General Kellogg's point is exactly right. And it's not just on the ground. Where's the great Black Sea Fleet? Nowhere to be seen. The Ukrainians, who don't have a ship in a traditional sense, have defeated the Black Sea Fleet. They're not a factor. The great Russian Air Force has destroyed zero trains coming from Rzeszów, bringing equipment and ammunition from Poland and Ukraine. Not one train has been destroyed. In 3 years, not one convoy has been destroyed coming from Poland. That's incredible failure by the Russian Air Force. It's because they cannot fly in Ukrainian airspace. They're terrified of going there. So the only thing the Russians can do is keep killing innocent Ukrainian civilians and keep hoping that we will get tired. If my government, my country's government, and the rest of Europe and Canada would say, it's our strategic objective that Ukraine defeats Russia, that Russia is forced to live inside their own borders, that's the objective. And then we use all of our tools to accomplish that, to include economic tools. Why is Russia still able to export oil through the Baltic Sea as well as the Black Sea? Why are they doing that? If we stop that, and if we help Ukraine continue to attack Russia's oil and gas infrastructure, Russia will not be able to continue the war. Without that oil, the revenues from the oil, they can't do it.
This is exactly what Ukrainians are doing. They're targeting oil depots, which is so important. Yep. Last but not least, I mean, our time is coming to an end, but I wanted to ask you, based on intelligence reports, do you think that we're going to see this conflict spill over Europe in the next few years?
Only if we allow Ukraine to fail.
General Ben Hodges, pleasure as always to have you join us here. Thank you so much, former commander of U.S. Army Europe. And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more.